The Galactic Council had made what they considered to be the most logical decision in their 3,000-year history. At least, that's what High Counselor Vex-19 kept telling himself as he watched the transport ship disappear into the swirling vortex of Kepler 442c's atmosphere. Sir, his aide, a nervous Xanthari named Kix, chittered through his mandibles. Are you absolutely certain this was wise? I mean, sending those humans to nightmare itself? Vex-19's three eyes rolled in perfect synchronization. Oh, how he despised that nickname the younger species had given to Kepler 442c. Nightmare. Such dramatics. The planet was simply a Class 0 death world, nothing more than a minor inconvenience for any properly evolved species. Well, perhaps minor wasn't the correct term, considering that every single expedition they'd sent there had resulted in complete annihilation within 72 hours. Kix, my dear insectoid friend, Vex-19 said, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that only came from being the supreme ruler of 47 star systems. We have exhausted every other option. The Voldorians, with their acid-resistant exoskeletons, dead in 6 hours. The Garathians, with their ability to survive in absolute zero temperatures, frozen solid in 4. The Krillian cyber-enhanced warriors, their technology failed them within minutes. The counselor paused, savoring the moment. But humans? Oh, these delightful little primates think they're so special. They've been boasting about their adaptability and survival instincts ever since they stumbled into our galactic community 50 years ago. Well, let's see how adaptive they are when facing a world that literally tries to kill everything that breathes. Kix's compound eyes twitched nervously. But sir, what if they actually succeed? What if they somehow manage to establish the mining operation on Kepler 442c? The trilithium deposits there could power the entire galaxy for millennia. Succeed? Vex-19 let out a laugh that sounded like grinding metal. My innocent little assistant, do you have any idea what's down there? Kepler 442c doesn't just kill visitors, it murders them with style. The atmosphere is a cocktail of sulfuric acid and methane gas. The gravity is 3 times what these humans are used to. The native wildlife includes creatures that make our worst nightmares look like cuddly pets. And that's just the surface. He activated the holographic display, showing a spinning model of the planet. The temperature swings from -200 degrees at night to +400 during the day. The magnetic field fluctuates so wildly that it scrambles any electronic equipment within minutes. The soil is so toxic that it dissolves organic matter on contact. And the weather? Let's just say, that acid rain is considered a pleasant drizzle compared to what passes for a storm there. Kix's antennae drooped. So why send them at all, sir, if you're so certain they'll die? Vex-19's smile was the kind that made entire planets surrender without a fight. Because, my dear Kix, humans have this absolutely adorable quality called arrogance. They actually believe they can survive anything the universe throws at them. It's both pathetic and amusing. By sending them to Kepler 442c, we accomplish 3 things. We get rid of their constant requests to join our mining expeditions. We prove once and for all that their species is just as fragile as any other. And we finally have a legitimate excuse to mark that cursed planet as permanently uninhabitable. Meanwhile, aboard the transport ship Defiant Dreams, Captain Jake Morrison was having a very different conversation with his crew. The ship's common area buzzed with nervous energy as 25 humans prepared for what their mission briefing had politely called an extremely challenging colonial assignment. All right, people, Morrison announced, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from surviving 3 different alien wars and a particularly nasty encounter with space pirates near the Andromeda sector. Let's go over this one more time. We're heading to Kepler 442c, which the Galactic Council has designated as a Class 0 death world. Class 0? Asked Dr. Sarah Martinez, the mission's chief scientist, raising an eyebrow. I thought Class 5 was the highest danger rating. Morrison's grin was distinctly predatory. Apparently they had to invent a new classification just for this place. From what I understand, Class 0 means abandon all hope, ye who enter here. The crew erupted in nervous laughter. These weren't your average humans. They were the best of the best, hand-picked from Earth's most elite military units, scientific expeditions, and survival specialists. Each one had volunteered for this mission knowing full well that the odds of survival were, according to the Council's calculations, approximately 0.001%. So what exactly are we walking into? Asked Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, the team's demolitions expert, who had a reputation for finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Morrison activated the ship's main display, showing grainy satellite images of Kepler 442c's surface. Well, the good news is that it's got plenty of oxygen. The bad news is that it's mixed with enough sulfuric acid to dissolve your lungs before you can appreciate the irony. Environmental suits? Suggested Dr. Tom Wilson, the mission's geologist. Standard issue won't last more than a few hours, Morrison replied. The acidic atmosphere eats through the seals. We've been equipped with experimental-grade X suits that should theoretically last up to 72 hours. After that, we're breathing whatever passes for air down there. Theoretically? Echoed Lieutenant David Park, the communications specialist. Well, they've never been field-tested, Morrison admitted cheerfully, mainly because every test subject died before they could file a report. The silence that followed was broken by a distinctly human sound, laughter. Not the nervous giggling of a species facing extinction, but the deep, belly-shaking laughter of a people who had looked death in the face so many times that they'd started exchanging holiday cards. "You know what?" said Corporal Lisa Thompson, the team's medic, wiping tears from her eyes. "I've always wanted to see what a Class 0 Deathworld looks like. Eats another boring desk job on Luna Colony. That's the spirit." Morrison beamed. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We die horribly in an alien hellscape that defies all known laws of physics and biology. Tuesday must be a slow day." The truth was, Morrison had read the classified files. He knew exactly what they were flying into. And it was worse than anything the Council had told them. Much worse. The planet wasn't just hostile. It was actively malevolent. As if the very laws of nature had conspired to create the perfect killing machine disguised as a world. But here's the thing about humans that the Galactic Council had never quite understood. They didn't see obstacles, they saw puzzles. They didn't see certain death. They saw the ultimate challenge. And they definitely didn't see a Class 0 Deathworld as a reason to quit. They saw it as a reason to prove that human stubbornness was the most powerful force in the galaxy. "Landing in T-minus 30 minutes, announced the ship's AI in a voice that somehow managed to sound both cheerful and apologetic. "Please ensure all personal effects are secured, and that your last wills and testaments have been properly filed with Earth Central Command. Gee. Thanks for the pep talk," muttered Sergeant Gonzalez. As the ship began its descent through Kepler 442c's atmosphere, the external cameras showed exactly why the planet had earned its fearsome reputation. The sky was a sickly green color that seemed to shift and writhe like a living thing. Lightning bolts the size of skyscrapers cracked across the horizon, not in the familiar blue-white of Earth's storms, but in angry reds and purples that hurt to look at directly. "Surface temperature is currently 412 degrees Fahrenheit, reported Dr. Martinez, reading from her instruments. "Atmospheric pressure is crushing everything below 2,000 feet. Wind speeds are averaging 200 miles per hour, with gusts up to 350. And the radiation levels are, well, let's just say they're not compatible with most forms of life." "Most forms of life," Morrison repeated thoughtfully. "Good thing we're not most forms of life." The landing was what could generously be called controlled chaos. The ship's heat shield screamed in protest as they cut through the acid-laden atmosphere. The hull groaned under the immense pressure. Emergency alarms blared continuously as system after system registered readings that were technically impossible according to known physics. "Navigation is down," shouted Park over the cacophony. "Whatever's in this atmosphere is scrambling our instruments. Engines are overheating," added Chief Engineer Roberto Santos. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before total system failure. Landing thrusters are functioning at 60% capacity," reported pilot Ann Foster, fighting to keep the ship steady as hurricane-force winds tried to tear it apart. "I can get us down," But it's going to be rough. Define rough. Morrison called back. Remember that time we crash-landed on Proxima Prime during the Zeta Rebellion? Foster replied, her knuckles white on the controls. The time where we bounced 300 yards and lost half the ship. This is going to be worse. The impact rattled every bolt and rivet in the ship. Emergency lighting flickered on as main power failed. The smell of burning electronics filled the air, mixed with something else that made everyone's eyes water. Everyone alive? Morrison asked, pulling himself up from where he'd been thrown against a bulkhead. A chorus of groans and curses confirmed that the crew had survived their introduction to Kepler 442c. They were battered, bruised, and their ship was definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. But they were alive. Well, said Dr. Wilson, examining a crack in the main viewport that was slowly spreading despite the ship's reinforced construction, we're officially the first humans to successfully land on a Class 0 Deathworld. Define successfully, muttered Santos, watching sparks fly from a control panel. We're not dead yet, Wilson replied cheerfully. By Galactic Council standards, that makes us overachievers. Outside, the wind howled with a sound that seemed almost alive, almost hungry. Through the cracked viewport, they could see the landscape of Kepler 442c, a twisted hellscape of black rock formations that jutted from the ground like broken teeth, pools of liquid that bubbled and steamed with colors that had no names, and in the distance, shapes that moved in ways that defied both logic and anatomy. Motion sensors are picking up movement out there, reported Park, squinting at his barely functional instruments. A big movement. Multiple contacts, approaching from all directions. Indigenous life forms? Asked Martinez. Either that, or the rocks around here are unusually sociable, Morrison replied. All right, people. This is it. We came here to establish a mining operation and prove that humans can survive anywhere the galaxy throws us. The Council thinks we'll be dead within 72 hours. He looked around at his crew, these 25 humans who had volunteered to face the impossible, and his grin was absolutely feral. I say we prove them wrong. Who's with me? The cheer that erupted from the crew was loud enough to rattle the damaged hull. Outside, the native creatures of Kepler 442c paused in their approach, confused by the strange sound. It wasn't the scream of terror they were expecting, or the wail of despair that usually preceded the death of off-world visitors. It was laughter. Pure, defiant, absolutely human laughter in the face of certain doom. And for the first time in its billion-year history, Kepler 442c began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, it had finally met its match. 73 hours later, High Counselor Vex 19 was pacing his office like a caged predator. His three eyes kept darting to the communication console that had remained stubbornly silent since the humans had landed on that accursed planet. Sir, Keeks ventured carefully. Perhaps we should send a reconnaissance probe to confirm their status? Status? Vex 19 snorted. The status is obvious, my dear assistant. They're dead. Horribly, painfully dead. Just like every other species foolish enough to set foot on that nightmare world. The only question is whether they lasted 6 hours or the full predicted 72. The communication console chose that exact moment to crackle to life. Galactic Council. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Expedition. Do you copy? Vex 19 and Kiek stared at the device as if it had just spoken in ancient Vorlon poetry. The voice was clear, strong, and disturbingly cheerful for someone who should have been dissolving in acid rain 3 days ago. That's impossible, Keeks whispered. Vex 19 activated the communicator with a trembling tentacle. Captain Morrison? This is High Counselor Vex 19. We were expecting your final transmission much sooner. Final transmission? Morrison's laugh crackled through the speakers. Oh, you mean like a death rattle? Sorry to disappoint, Council, but we're having way too much fun down here to die just yet. Fun? The word came out as a strangled wheeze. You're on Kepler 442c. The atmosphere alone should have killed you by now. Yeah, about that, Morrison replied casually. Turns out your atmospheric readings were a bit off. Sure, it's mostly sulfuric acid and methane, but there are pockets of breathable air if you know where to look. Dr. Martinez figured out the pattern on day 2. Back on the planet's surface, Dr. Martinez was indeed having the time of her life. She stood at the edge of what the crew had dubbed the breathing caves, natural formations that filtered the toxic atmosphere through layers of mineral deposits, creating small oases of survivable air. "Jake, A-Key," she called over to Morrison, who was currently arm wrestling with something that looked like a cross between a bear and a walking cactus. "You need to see this. The mineral formations here aren't just random. They're actually part of a complex ecosystem that processes the atmospheric toxins." The creature Morrison was wrestling made a sound like grinding gears and tapped out with one of its spiky appendages. Morrison grinned and helped it back to its feet, or what passed for feet on a being with 12 legs. "Good match, Spike," he said, patting the creature on what he assumed was its head. "Same time tomorrow?" The alien creature, which the crew had discovered was not only intelligent but surprisingly friendly once you proved you weren't easy prey, made a rumbling sound that their universal translator had decided meant absolutely, "You magnificent lunatic." "Sir," came the voice of Counselor Vex 19 through the communicator, sounding increasingly desperate. "Please tell us you haven't made contact with the indigenous life forms. Our records indicate they're extremely hostile." "Hostile?" Morrison looked around at the dozen or so native creatures that had gathered to watch the daily human versus alien wrestling matches. "Council, I think your intelligence reports might need updating. These guys are great. Spike here just taught Sergeant Gonzalez how to make something that tastes almost like coffee from the local flora." Indeed, Sergeant Gonzalez was currently sampling a brew made from what looked like purple mushrooms that grew in the acid pools. The taste was indescribable, but it had the same energizing effect as caffeine and came with the added bonus of making your teeth temporarily glow in the dark. "The electromagnetic fluctuations should have fried all your equipment," Vex 19 protested, his voice climbing toward hysteria. "Oh, they did," Morrison confirmed cheerfully. "Complete systems failure within the first hour. But you know what? Chief Santos here used to rebuild engines with nothing but scrap metal and determination back on Luna Colony. Turns out, the same minerals that make this place so deadly also make excellent conductors when properly configured." Chief Engineer Santos looked up from where he was installing what could generously be called improvised technology into their mining equipment. The original plan had been to use standard Galactic Council mining gear, but that had died faster than a politician's promise. So Santos had done what humans do best. He'd improvised, adapted, and overcome. "I've got the primary drill running on a hybrid system," Santos reported. "It uses the planet's own electromagnetic field as a power source. Not only does it work, but it's actually more efficient than our original equipment." "Impossible," Vex 19 shrieked through the communicator. "The temperature variations alone should have killed you all." "Temperature variations?" Lieutenant Park chimed in from where he was setting up the communication relay. "You mean the toasty 400 degrees during the day and the brisk -200 at night?" "Yeah, that was a challenge for about 5 minutes. Dr. Wilson figured out that the cave systems maintain a pretty steady 75 degrees year-round." Dr. Wilson emerged from one of the deeper cave systems, covered in what looked like glowing moss but grinning from ear to ear. "Jake, you're not going to believe this. The trilithium deposits down here aren't just abundant, they're self-replenishing. The planet's core is literally a trilithium generator." "Self-replenishing?" Morrison's eyebrows shot up, as in, "We could mine this place for centuries without depleting the reserves." "Centuries?" Wilson laughed. "Try millennia. This single planet could power the entire galaxy for 10,000 years and still have reserves left over." On the Council ship, Vex 19 was having what could politely be described as a complete mental breakdown. His carefully constructed worldview, based on the fundamental principle that Class 0 Deathworlds were unsurvivable, was crumbling faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami. "This isn't possible," he muttered, his 3 eyes spinning in different directions. "Every law of physics, every principle of biology, every rule of common sense says this cannot be happening." "Sir," Kiek said quietly, Perhaps we should consider the possibility that we've been approaching this all wrong. What if Class 0 death worlds aren't actually impossible to survive? What if they just require a different kind of species to survive them? Different how? Vex 19 demanded. Well, Keeks consulted his datapad. Every species we've sent to Kepler 442c has been highly advanced, technologically dependent, and, well, sensible. They approach the planet as a problem to be solved with superior technology and careful planning. And that's exactly how it should be approached, Vex 19 snapped. But humans didn't do that. Keeks continued. According to these reports, they treated it as an adventure. When their technology failed, they didn't panic. They improvised. When they encountered hostile conditions, they didn't retreat, they adapted. When they met dangerous creatures, they didn't fight, they made friends. Back on the planet, Morrison was reviewing the day's progress with his team. In just 3 days, they had established a permanent base camp, made first contact with multiple intelligent species, discovered the largest trilithium deposits in galactic history, and somehow managed to turn a Class 0 death world into what was starting to feel like a vacation resort. All right, people, Morrison announced, progress report. Martinez, how's the atmospheric processing coming along? Better than expected, she replied, gesturing to a series of devices that looked like they'd been built from spare parts and optimism. We've managed to create breathable air pockets throughout a 50 square kilometer area. The native creatures have been incredibly helpful. They've been showing us which minerals work best for filtration. Gonzalez, how's the mining operation? Ahead of schedule. The sergeant grinned. Turns out, when you're not constantly fighting the planet, mining becomes a lot easier. We've already extracted enough trilithium to power Earth for a year, and we've barely scratched the surface. Park communications? Full galactic network access restored, Park reported. I've managed to boost our signal using the planet's natural electromagnetic field. We could probably communicate with Earth from here without using any external satellites. Wilson, geological survey? This place is incredible, the geologist said, his eyes still bright with excitement. It's not just trilithium. There are mineral deposits here that don't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Rare Earth elements that could revolutionize everything from space travel to medical technology. Santos, equipment status, all systems running at 110% efficiency, the engineer reported proudly. The improvised modifications are actually working better than the original designs. I've got requests from 3 different engineering corps to study our setup. Thompson medical report, 0 casualties, 0 serious injuries, and surprisingly, everyone's health has actually improved since we arrived. The medic said with amazement. Something in the local environment seems to boost human immune systems and accelerate healing. Private Jensen's broken arm from the landing healed completely in 2 days. Morrison nodded, satisfied. Outstanding work, everyone. Oh, and one more thing. He activated the communicator. Council, are you still listening? We're here. Came Vex 19's voice, now barely above a whisper. Excellent. I have a progress report for you. Mission objectives achieved ahead of schedule. Mining operation established and running at full capacity. The first contact protocols successfully implemented with multiple indigenous species. Permanent settlement established. Environmental challenges overcome. And as of this morning, we've officially claimed Kepler 442c as a human colony world under Galactic Settlement Law Article 247. The silence from the Council ship was deafening. Furthermore, B. Morrison continued, we're prepared to offer mining contracts to any species brave enough to work alongside humans on what we're now calling New Terra. Fair warning, though, applicants should be prepared for hard work, creative problem solving, and the occasional arm wrestling match with the locals. This is impossible. Vex 19 finally managed. You're humans. You're supposed to be a primitive species barely worthy of galactic citizenship. Primitive? Morrison's voice carried an edge now. Council, let me explain something about humans. We're the species that looked at fire and decided to make it work for us. We're the species that saw an ocean and built boats to cross it. We're the species that stared at the sky and decided we belonged up there with the stars. He paused. letting that sink in. You call this place a Class 0 Deathworld. We call it Tuesday. You see impossible challenges. We see engineering problems. You see certain death. We see the ultimate fixer-upper project, but the other species. Vex 19 protested. The Valdorians, the Garathians, the Krillians, they were all superior to humans in every measurable way. Superior in the ways you measure, Morrison corrected. They were stronger, faster, more technologically advanced, but they were also more rigid, more cautious, more dependent on their technology. When their careful plans failed, they had no backup. When their superior technology broke down, they were helpless. And humans? Humans are the galaxy's ultimate improvisers. We've been making the impossible work since we figured out how to make pointy sticks. This planet didn't defeat us because it couldn't break the one thing that makes us truly dangerous, our absolute refusal to accept that something can't be done. 6 months later, New Terra had become the most prosperous mining colony in the galaxy. Humans and native creatures worked side by side, extracting trilithium and rare minerals while simultaneously conducting the most comprehensive xenobiological research project in galactic history. The Galactic Council had quietly reclassified Kepler 442c from Class 0 Deathworld to human-compatible settlement world, though they never officially admitted their error. High Counselor Vex 19 had submitted his resignation and taken up meditation on a quiet moon somewhere in the Outer Rim, where he spent his days contemplating the fundamental unpredictability of the universe. And Captain Jake Morrison? He was currently arm wrestling a creature that looked like a combination of an octopus, a rhinoceros, and a disco ball, while his crew prepared for their next assignment, a Class 0 Deathworld in the Andromeda sector that the Council insisted was absolutely, definitely, completely impossible for any species to survive. Morrison grinned as he won the match, helped his opponent to its feet, tentacles, whatever, and activated his communicator. Earth Command, this is Morrison. We've received another impossible assignment from the Galactic Council. Permission to make the impossible look easy again? Permission granted, Captain, came the reply. Go show them what humans do best. Copy that, Command. Defiant dreams out, because that's what humans do. They look at the impossible, laugh in its face, and then make it work anyway. The galaxy had spent 3,000 years believing that some things simply couldn't be done. They just hadn't met the right species yet,